Welcome to the Get Loved Up podcast. I'm Koya Webb, founder of Get Loved Up, where we inspire you to love yourself more, love others more, and love the planet more. Each week, I'll interview a special guest who will share their insights on how they practice daily self-care, tackle tough challenges in life, and thrive in the world one breath at a time. You will be inspired to take control of your life as you heal yourself mentally, spiritually, and physically, and create a reality in alignment with your deepest passions. Let's get loved up. Everybody's searching for something to fill that empty space. Dr. Ebony Butler is a licensed psychologist and food and relationship strategist who has made it her mission to help women of color heal and thrive in the areas of trauma and diet recovery. Dr. Ebony specializes in guiding women to develop skills that increase their effectiveness in self-care and interpersonal interactions, including communication and asking for, getting what they want and need. Aligning with her passion to break through barriers that make it difficult for Black people and other people of color to access quality mental health care, Dr. Ebony created the first ever self-exploration card deck for Black women and other women of color. Dr. Ebony, welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm just so excited because I had to order my card deck. It's on the way. I'm so excited to get these cards because I feel like, especially right now, it is so imperative that we focus on our mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was watching the news this morning and they've now just labeled this as a mental health crisis. And somebody else came on and they said, you know, we were in a mental health crisis before, but it took the whole world to come to a complete stop for us to see that our mental health system is lacking and has so many deficits and that a lot of people are struggling. And with this pandemic and the social unrest and all this stuff that we've been witness to, we are definitely in a mental health crisis. In the mental health field, we've been talking like this. We're going to see this years down the line. A lot of research studies are already starting with understanding the mental health impact that such a year in the, following, we were only in January, we've already had a difficult year, right? So as much as all of these things have had on our mental health, we're going to be thinking about this and talking about this for years to come. So to not pay attention to our mental health, I think is a huge disservice to us as a society and especially to Black people. We need to be talking about it and we need to be paying attention to it and finding some resources and solutions.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And can you take me a little bit back with just how you grew up and what made you decide to become a psychologist?
Yeah, interesting question about how I grew up. So I'm from Mississippi. I am from Jackson, Mississippi. Yeah, Southern girl through and through. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. But I'm from Mississippi. I went to Jackson State. I went to Mississippi State. And then I moved to Houston, and that's where I finished my grad school and got my doctorate. But growing up, mental health was not talked about. You didn't talk to anybody else outside of your house. You actually just went to church and you prayed about it. But I saw a lot of mental illness. I didn't know what it was at that time, but I knew that something was not right. Like, I think that the way that our families dealt with it back then was they called it crazy, or they would say that, oh, that's Uncle John in the back room. He's shell-shocked because Uncle John had gone to the military, that kind of thing. And so he's just shell-shocked, not knowing that now that's the term for PTSD. Right. So he was experiencing some stress from that. And you basically just kept your business in the house. That's how I grew up. You didn't have an outlet. If you were experiencing something, that meant that you weren't praying hard enough. That's how I grew up. And as kids, you didn't have anything to be depressed about, right? You didn't have anything to feel anything about, honestly, but happy because, what bills do you have? And that was the main thing. Like, what bills do you have? You don't have anything to be depressed about. And so then when I went to college, Jackson State was my first time that I actually said, I'm going to study this. And that's where I majored in psychology. And so I got into a research program where I studied depression amongst first-year African-American college students or first generation African-American college students. And then that just morphed into me studying trauma. And so I wanted to become a psychologist, one, because I knew I wanted to study behavior. I've always been interested in human behavior. But I wasn't quite sure what that would look like, but I also knew I wanted to be of service to people. And then I had a teacher in high school who was like, I took a psychology course in high school, and he was like, you're going to become a doctor. And I was like, oh, okay. Let's do it then. And so I did it. So that's literally how those two things landed in my lap. And it was just basically taking somebody to say, I see that in you. I'm going to start calling you Dr. Burrell, was my maiden name at that time. So I'm going to call you Dr. Burrell. And that's really how it morphed. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I can't let you down. I have to do it. And then the more I got into the field of mental health and understood abnormalities and pathology and that kind of thing, I was like, oh, I really like this, but I really like it from this standpoint. And that's where I was able to kind of understand and kind of morph this into my own passion, which was trauma and working with women.
I love your story. That's such a beautiful story. And I love that you said it took someone else saying, I see this in you. And sometimes that's all it takes, is that one person that believes in you. To give you that confidence to know that you can. So thank you so much for taking us on that journey. And as you were studying, you were unpacking, the depression and trauma. What was the most shocking thing you found out about mental health?
Yeah, one of the most shocking things was that a lot of college students were depressed. And I don't know, looking back now, how are you not? You're first generation, you're doing something that nobody has done. You're basically having to navigate this all on your own. You're having to create the roadmap. You're having to figure out the difficulties. And I myself was a first generation college student, and that was really hard. I didn't have anybody to help me fill out financial aid. I didn't have anybody to help me figure out which classes to go to. Like, all of that came from counselors. And so it feels very lonely. It feels very depressing to not have that. It feels empowering and depressing at the same time, if that makes sense, not to have that roadmap already kind of laid out for you, not to have those resources, and having to make mistakes and having to lose scholarships and having to fail out of school. All those things happened for me, and happened for so many people who were in the program or in college at that time. And that was shocking to me, because that's not what we saw in a different world. Everybody was happy. I was like, what? You lose scholarships? What? I know Denise lost, her stuff in college, but college wasn't supposed to go like that. College was supposed to be fun. You weren't supposed to get bad grades. It was supposed to be this most enjoyable time, but you're also having to navigate loneliness and money issues, and you're having to figure out how to budget and all of these things all at once. So you're basically having to just grow up really, really fast. And that's depressing. So that was really shocking to me. And then when going to my college, we didn't have a counseling center. I didn't realize that was abnormal until I got to Mississippi State, where they had a counseling center. I was like, wait, what? So we went to school all 4 years, no counseling center. I get to Mississippi State. Of course, there's more resources. It's a PWI. And I was like, so they have resources we don't. So we're basically out here literally winging it. I don't know how we all got through, because we didn't have the resources. We had a wellness clinic, and we only got this room where you could go and get talk to somebody after somebody was murdered at our school. After this girl died to domestic violence in our school. Then they were like, oh, well, we're going to put somebody in there who will sit at the front desk, but it wasn't a counseling center. So that was really shocking to me. And I always, after I graduated Jackson State, I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to work at that counseling center. That never happened, but we have one now, but we still have a long way to go. So that was really shocking. And it's still very shocking to this day that it's not where it needs to be.
Right. Oh, it breaks my heart, because it's like, we need to be supported. We need each other. I mean, and that's the truth. And I'm so happy that you decided to become a doctor, and you are helping so many people. So I want you to share a little bit for those listening that are saying, yes, I'm depressed and I'm not okay. What are some of the things that you've seen help the most with someone who is going through depression, or who is feeling, a deep sense of sadness or loneliness?
Yeah, I think that just leading with validation, right? I think growing up, hearing you don't have anything to be depressed about, or you're in college, y'all are having a good time, there's nothing to be sad about, is very invalidating. And it makes you feel wrong for having the emotions that you feel, or just kind of being in the mind state that you're in. So I think if you lead with validation for people, it's like, I can see why you would feel that way. I can understand why that would be so tough for you. I can understand how you can have both this incredible opportunity in front of you, and I can understand why it feels incredibly lonely. Right. So I think giving people permission to feel what they feel goes a long way. When you try to talk people out of feeling what they feel or dismiss, people feel even further shut down. They feel even further dismissed, and that can increase and exacerbate the emotions that they feel. So I think that people who are experiencing things need that validation first. And I think that you outside of validating, ask, is there something that I can do to help you? Mm-hmm. Versus you need to talk to somebody, or you need to pray it away. I don't think we need to tell people what they need to do. I think we can ask them, what do you need from me? Is there anything I can do to help and support? Because sometimes people don't want to go talk to somebody right away. Sometimes people don't trust. And that's very natural and normal given the ways that the mental health field has treated people of color. It's not, you're just going to have that trust immediately. So I think that you lead with validation and then say, how can I support you? What is it that I can do? Sometimes people want you to be with them. Sometimes people want you to check in on them. Sometimes people want you to cook them something, bring them some food. Sometimes people do want you to help them find a therapist or help them find a coach or something of that nature. But I think that those are the things we have to start with. And then we have to normalize not being okay. And I see this running around social media, but I don't really think we understand what that really means. Mm-hmm. We have to normalize not having your life be a highlight reel all the time. Because in the same breath that we say, it's okay not to be okay, we see this lavish living that everybody has. Like we're only seeing people's great sides. We're only seeing the ways that people are doing when it comes to doing well and like living well. But I think we have to normalize depression. We have to normalize anxiety. Not just those two, because anxiety has become pretty normalized. I think we have to normalize bipolar. I think we have to normalize PTSD. I think we have to normalize schizophrenia. I think we have to normalize it all because this is the diversity of it. And we have to make sure that we are kind of walking carefully with how we stigmatize a lot of these other significant mental illness or severe mental illnesses. Like everybody's latched on to the term anxiety. Now everybody has anxiety, which we know to be true. All of us have anxiety. Some just kind of creates a lot less functioning for many people, or creates more deficits in functioning. But I think that we have to also say, okay, so you struggle with bipolar disorder. Okay. That doesn't mean that you also can't have a great quality of life. That doesn't make you any more crazy. So I think we have to get better with that. We have to talk about suicide. It's not a white person's thing. It's not an old white man's thing. This is an everyday thing. More Black women are committing suicide at increasing rates, right? Children are committing suicide or taking their lives by suicide. Let me say that, taking their lives by suicide at greater rates. So we have to normalize that this is something that people do for a long time. Even just last year, I saw somebody say, well, this isn't something that Black people do. Black people aren't killing themselves. And I was like, wait, what? Yes, we are. Mm-hmm. And we have to normalize that, because the minute that you say Black people aren't doing this, and then a Black person finds that that's their only way to cope, or that's the coping skill they're choosing, they feel isolated and they feel wrong. And so I think if we're going to help people, and if we're going to be more inclusive, and we're going to try to get people the help that they need, we can't kind of continue to talk about it as if it's this thing that only those people do. This is an us thing. We have to help our communities get better with it.
Absolutely. I love that. And I 100% agree. We have to normalize it. And I wrote about it in my book. I've had depression. I've had suicidal thoughts. And just last year, I had PTSD right after the George Floyd incident. I really had a tough time because I had an incident when I was younger with my brother where I was having flashbacks, and I was not okay for 3 days as a coach. And I was still, and I feel like a lot of knowing that and knowing you could still be a high functioning person and have these things happen. And because these things happen, like you said, let's just remove the stigma. It doesn't mean you can't serve. It doesn't mean you can't be a leader or work a good job. It just means, you know, some of us are more sensitive than others. And I am a very sensitive soul. And so when things hit me, they hit me hard. And thank goodness I have yoga and meditation and breathwork to cope now, because if not, you know, I don't know if I would even be here. And so I appreciate you. And that's why it meant so much for me to have you on, is because I do want to normalize, and I want to continue telling my story and sharing my story so people can, you know, realize that you can be a great person and still suffer from these things, but it doesn't mean life is over. It doesn't mean you're not a good person. It just means we all need tools to process our pain. So can you take us a little bit into some of the tools one can use to kind of process if they're going through a hard time?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that and being transparent. I love that you talked about being high functioning, because this is what a lot of therapists are dealing with right now too, is being high functioning and holding space for people who are also struggling, because being high functioning, being a coach doesn't make you immune to human emotions and suffering, right? So we have to, one, validate that. And so I talk about validation a lot, because I know that validation is the precursor for doing work and giving yourself permission to do work. When we try to dismiss it, that's where we put up blocks and create blocks for ourselves. So not only do we need to externally validate, we need to internally validate. So one tool I would say is to start with internal validation, which is self-validation. And it can be as simple as, you know what, you're having a rough time right now. It makes sense that you're having a rough time given what you've experienced with your brother. It makes sense that this is triggering for you, given what has happened. What we like to say is, oh, just pull it together, just get it together. Why are you like this? That's not validating. That's actually creating space where you start to doubt yourself, and that doubt leads to more anxiety and depression. But you know what, girl, it makes sense that you are struggling to get over this breakup, because this is something that you had high expectations for. Or it makes sense that your feelings are extremely hurt right now, given how much faith you put in that person and how much that person led you to trust them, or how much you trusted that person. That's one. The other thing I would do is I would say find a way to actually get thoughts from here out. That could be through yoga. That could be through recording yourself talking. That could be through journaling. And I don't lead with journaling because everybody's not a journaler. Everybody doesn't like to put pen to paper, but I do think that there's a way for us to talk. Some people sing, some people write songs, some people write poetry, but I really do think that we need to get things from here out, because up here they live in this abstract world where they keep growing, and our thoughts are going to do what they're going to do, and that's grow like a fire. So if we put them on paper or we get them out, we can actually simplify them to be able to work through them. It's like having a bundled up or a bunched up spool of thread and kind of straightening it out. That's what I kind of take our thoughts and emotions to be. So that's the other thing. The other thing I would say do is find a way to actually challenge what you're thinking. Really stop and ask yourself, does that have any basis in reality? I know you're telling yourself that you're a failure, but what are the other parts that you're missing? So for my clients, I literally like draw a pie with 8 slices. And I say, here's what you're telling yourself. You have 1 slice that you're telling yourself, and you're taking that to mean everything. What are the other 7 slices of information that we're missing? What else could be happening here? Because the more we broaden our perspective and broaden what we're telling ourselves, the better able we're to bring those emotions back down to baseline. What's happening when we're anxious is that something is making it creep up, up, up. And much of that is us manufacturing things. That means making up things in our mind. These people are going to think this about me. These people are going to think this. Well, I'm not going to do this. And we're jumping to conclusions and predicting the future, right? Well, what are the other possibilities? These people don't even know I exist. These people really are just going to be appreciative that I put my best effort out, and they're going to give me space and grace to make revisions or whatever we're telling ourselves about something. Those are the other pieces we're not paying attention to. So actually using that pie chart to actually get your thoughts out, to actually kind of tease them apart so that you can have a broader perspective, which then helps you have more handle on your emotions. The last thing I would say is really become really intentional about the ways that we're taking care of ourselves. If we're not eating well, if we're not sleeping well, if we're not moving our bodies in some way, we're actually holding a lot of tension inside of our bodies. What we eat impacts how we move, how we live, what we think, what we drink impacts all of that. So we really have to make sure we're taking care of our physical bodies in order to take care of our mental and emotional bodies. So those are the things that I would say, and people can actually start now. That doesn't mean that you need to go on a diet. It might mean that you need to get more water, because the less, like, people don't really know, but when you're dehydrated, you have a likelihood and you're more susceptible to anxiety. What you eat, if you're eating highly processed, high sugar, high fatty foods, then you're more susceptible to anxiety and depression. So you want to make sure that you're helping your body help itself. You're not revving up your nervous system or your chemical levels, your serotonin, your dopamine, all these things with things that you're putting in your body. Yoga, movement, and you don't have to do the insanity workout. You don't have to run 10 miles. You can literally dance. You can literally stretch. and move some of that stuff up and through. A lot of us are holding tension here in our shoulders, in our hips. We don't even know that we're holding a lot of tension in our hips. And I learned this from working with sexual trauma survivors, that a lot of tension and emotion is held here in our hips and in our abdomen. So stretching can actually help you release a lot of that stuff that is being just kind of pent up in there. So those would be the things that I would say to kind of start helping yourself to kind of feel a little bit better.
Thank you. I'm feeling better just listening to you, because like being a sensitive person, like I go through these waves all the time. And I feel like a lot of things you say, I just want to call it out, how it shows up in my life. Like I know when I really get sad, like if I go through a breakup, or even it could be like transitioning in my company or really things ahead. The first thing that happens is I stop cooking for myself. I stop eating. Maybe I'll just have a shake, or maybe I'll just have a green drink. But I allow myself, as long as I make sure like I'm taking my multivitamins, I'm getting my nutrients, I don't force myself to eat, and I just keep an eye on my weight. But I notice, I'm like, okay, I'm sad. And that's another thing, just telling people I'm really sad right now. I'm good, but I'm really sad. I'm really processing, telling people I'm tender. Like these are things that I never used to do. I thought I had to be strong. I thought I had to have it all together. No, I'm leading a meeting. I'm like, y'all, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I'm really sad right now. I'm going through changes. And people look like, what is she talking about? But it means something to me to call it out. And I feel like the more, like you said, we normalize it, especially high functioning people that are still holding space for a lot of people, to have those sad moments and have those moments where, you know, I had some days where I couldn't sleep. I know if I'm at my peak, if I'm not sleeping, or if I'm waking up early and I can't go back to sleep, that lets me know like something's really bothering me that I need to address. And I need to do those things you said, go for a walk, dance. And in my book, I call it your love bank, filling up my love bank and doing those things that bring me joy. That really does help. And it's just an energy shift. So nothing has happened. But the thing is, if I don't do that, then that sadness turns into depression, depression just turns into suicidal thoughts, and it just keeps going down the spectrum. And I feel like it's so important for us to have this conversation right now, because it's at the point where you say, you know what, I need to start taking care of myself. I need to start loving on myself. I need to talk to somebody, is when you can go just right back up the scale, you know? And sometimes I don't want to say it like it's just that easy, because I know it's not just that easy sometimes, but it's possible.
Yeah. And it's those baby steps, right? And it's taking the time to just actually build yourself up bit by bit. I think we get used to having these expectations that if I use a coping skill, that it's gonna completely change the way I feel. And that's really not what it is. Using a coping skill doesn't just magically make you feel better. These things are kind of put in place for maintenance purposes. They're put in place for endurance purposes. I used this analogy with a client earlier today. I was like, you know how hard it is to float in the ocean? And you know how hard it is to just swim in an ocean that you can't see a shore in sight? That's kind of how things feel for us right now. We don't know where the end is. And that's how it feels when people are navigating trauma itself, right? You're just swimming. And you have to stop and take breaks because it's exhausting. And you take those breaks because those things help you with your endurance. Those things help you with your maintenance. Those things help you to keep going. So you swim, you take a breath, you swim, you take a breath. And it's just really that much work. And you're just building on it, right? Until you're able to see some sort of way out where you start to see the shore. But you have to keep going, and it's not going to happen overnight. And another client said, this really sucks. And I was like, yeah, so change doesn't feel good. Doing the right thing for yourself doesn't feel good. Sometimes it actually hurts, and it hurts a lot. So you could be in a meeting hurting, and you know you still have to do the meeting, right? So that's allowing yourself to just feel what you feel and riding that wave. So thank you so much for sharing that, because it's the absolute truth. Like everything doesn't feel good. And sometimes we just need to do what we need to do to get through the moment. I remember one day, it had to be last year, but I was like, okay, my nap isn't working because I like to take naps. That's a coping skill. It could be a coping skill, or it could be avoidance. But sometimes when it works for me, it's a coping skill. I like to take a nap. I like to run. I like to work out. I like to eat a huge salad. I like to kind of have a glass of wine every now and then. Nothing was working. And I was like, okay, this is not working. This is not working. This is not working. Journaling is not working. Nothing's working. I'm just going to just let today just be what it is, and we'll start tomorrow. And sometimes you do have those days where it feels like all the coping skills you have available to you just aren't working. It doesn't mean that they won't. Sometimes what that means though, and I know this to be true for myself, is that I let things pile up so much that now I need way more than I have available to me to work through that. So one piece of advice I would give people, and I would encourage people to not let things mount so much, because what you have available to you might not break through what you're dealing with because you let it get so high. So you can catch it when it's small, it'll work. But if you wait until it gets high and you just keep putting it off, then yeah, nothing's gonna work. And it's not that it's not working. It's not working like you're used to it working.
Absolutely. I agree. It just takes more of it because like you said, it's building up.
Yeah.
So if you do these things, it's going to go here, but you needed to be all the way back down here. So you're going to have to keep loving yourself up without putting more pressure, judgment on yourself at the same time. So it's like, it's all about like that balance. And I love that you shared. Thank you so much for just sharing kind of how you deal with things and you try all these things and it didn't work. Cause I think we all can relate to like, well, I tried the breathwork thing. I tried the journal thing. I tried it, and it's not working. And that it's just, it doesn't mean it's not working. It means you need some more.
Yeah.
And some more and a lot more. And I remember I was going through a hard time one time and I was doing, all the things and journaling and I'm like, I still don't feel great.
Yeah.
I still, I don't even want to get up right now. And then the next day I went through the same thing and I woke up and I was like, I got through half and I was like, I'm okay. Wait a minute, I'm good. I mean, I feel real good. And sometimes it's just that we have to just allow ourselves to process because as you're doing these healing modalities and this breath work and this journaling and writing, it is working. It's working on an energetic, spiritual level. And it has to get through whatever you stuff down, all those issues, all those.
With everything going on in the world, now is a perfect time to pour into yourself. If you've been thinking about joining the wellness community and learning more about your health and wellness and how to improve the well-being of others, then the Get Loved Up Holistic Health and Yoga Teacher Training is for you. We have a variety of offerings from the 100 Hour to get a taste of how holistic health and yoga can bless your life, and the 200 to 500 hours to deep dive into the study of how meditation, breathwork, yoga, and mindful living can transform your health and the health of our world. Go to koyawebb.com/YTT for more details. I'll see you there.
And I want you to talk a little bit about the avoidance versus the coping, because I feel like a lot of times we do avoid addressing different traumas that we go through. And I really want you to unpack that a little bit so people can understand.
Yeah, so avoidance is necessary at times. Avoidance can be a tool until it doesn't work for us, until it becomes the only tool that we use. So when avoiding things tend to put you further behind than you were, that's how you know it's probably working against you. For instance, if you are in a meeting and you know that you're in an argument with your partner and your partner is texting, you probably need to avoid those text messages. Delay, avoidance, and delay to respond. What we tend to do many times is we avoid and we never come back to it. And we go back to the text messages and say, okay, so what do you want for dinner? We never addressed any of the argument. We just kind of floated over it and kind of went past it to smooth things out. And then we kind of go on as if nothing happened. But what it does is that gives us this temporary relief, short term. What it does in the long term is it creates resentment. It creates bitterness. It creates this foundation of mistrust, honestly, because you can't trust yourself to be vulnerable enough to work through issues or to say what is happening when you haven't built that foundation, right? When we're not addressing things. So that's avoidance that doesn't end up working for us. It is helpful to avoid things, but we always have to come back to it, right? We can't do it in a meeting. We can't have this blow up in a meeting. We have to suppress these tears while we're at work, while we're putting on this meeting, while we're doing this talk. We have to avoid and then cry later. Or we have to take a nap and then come back to it. What happens though, is that sometimes, like even for myself, I'll take a nap knowing that I don't have the time to take a nap. That's when naps become avoidant for me, is I know that I have a meeting in 2 hours, but I choose to take a 30-minute nap. I've already eaten into 30 minutes that I don't have because I need to be preparing for that meeting that's in 2 hours. So now when I wake up, I'm scrambling. And now I've kind of put myself in a pattern of just not being prepared, right? So when the nap does work for me, I take a nap, 20, 30-minute nap, and then I pop up and do exactly what I needed to do. And it gives me clarity. That's how I know it's working for me. If it allows me to get things done that I know I needed to get done. If it further puts me behind, that's when it becomes avoidant. So I would encourage people to ask themselves, is what I'm doing helping me, or is it putting me further behind? That's how you know if it's avoidance versus coping.
I love that.
And naps are very coping for me because I get to calm down. If I'm in an argument with somebody, or I'm feeling like in between clients and I need to just go close my eyes so that I can reset and be fully present for the next client, I'll do that. And that helps me to just kind of stay on top of my presence when I'm in session with clients. If not, and I'm just dragging and I'm taking phone calls and I'm doing all kinds of things, and I'm really doing a disservice to the clients who I'm showing up with because I'm really drained and not really present. So that's when it serves as a coping mechanism for me. And that's an effective coping mechanism. Let me say that, because all coping mechanisms help you cope. Whether it's effective or not is the thing.
Right. I love that. I feel like that's so good to call out. Just seeing, is it helping you or is it hurting you? Is it effective or non-effective? And I think, like you said, sometimes the same thing can work in different ways. And I really appreciate you calling that out, because it's not just black and white. It's really about noticing the results and what results different, I guess, activities are giving you. Can you talk a little bit about the hardest time for you? What has been one of the hardest times of your life, and how did you get through it?
I think now.
Okay.
I think if we're honest, I'm going to say now. I don't know how many therapists you talk to, but watching that news story this morning just really validated things for me and so many people who are in the therapist community. We don't have enough space and time to deal with what's being thrown our way. We're in a mental health crisis and everybody wants. Like, tell us this. It's a great time for business. I will say that. It's a great time for business. It's a great time to be in business. So many of us have been able to build our businesses and grow. But the amount of kind of space we're being asked to hold takes away from if we're not careful, takes away from our ability to hold space for ourselves and to really heal ourselves and to get ourselves together. Because I think the way that I think about it is being on this ship. The ship is going down, but you're a lifeguard. You have lifeguard training, right? You are also going down with this ship, but you're also tasked with saving everybody else on the ship as well, right? So you not only have to keep yourself afloat, but you got to keep the other people afloat too. That is hard and it's exhausting. And if you're not careful, you will most certainly tire yourself out. You will most certainly feel burnout, and you will most certainly hurt yourself while trying to help everybody else. So this space that we're being asked to hold is hard. And nobody has ever navigated this before. I don't know anybody who's ever been a therapist in a pandemic, while also kind of dealing with all this other stuff we're dealing with. It is difficult. And I would say I've had to practice now more than ever. Everything that I teach, I've had to practice it. I was like, okay, so you're telling your clients that they need to do something, or you're encouraging them to do something. I encourage you to do the same thing. So you're needing to go to sleep on time. You're telling your clients to go to sleep on time. You need to go to sleep on time. You're encouraging your clients to eat better. You need to eat better. You're encouraging your clients to get out and move. You need to get out and move. You're encouraging your clients to take a break. You need to take a break. You're encouraging your clients to say no. You need to say no. And so a lot of these things I'm learning, I'm having to do that typically I would say it's easier to referee than to actually be in the game. And that's what a lot of being a therapist has felt like. Like the referees, they run, but I mean, they're not playing. Like they don't have to do all the hard work, right? But you're actually having to do all of this. And you're like, listen, that's got to give. So I would say now. And it's so much pressure with focus being on the mental health field, of having to keep it together too. It's a lot of pressure. Also, while building a business and coming out with the therapy cards, like people are looking to you to kind of like explain this product, talk to us about it. People want to talk to you, which is fantastic. And just a lot because it's eating into the time that you already don't have. So time management has become very difficult. And then just, working from home. Did I say that? Like now everything has been virtual, right? I haven't been in person with a client since March. Everything has been through a computer, and yeah, it's tough to just kind of only have interaction through a computer. So you have to find those pockets of time to take care of yourself. And I'm a person who travels. So one of the other things that I do to take care of my mental health is that I travel a lot. Well, I mean, you imagine that we couldn't do that in 2020. So I kind of took some risks over the holidays and went to see my family. So I did that for myself. I recently just took a short vacation this weekend for myself. So I'm finding ways to actually do some things that I haven't been able to do. And so just trying to find some way to keep myself afloat, because it's hard.
I love that you shared that, because I feel like what I heard the most is that you have to put on your oxygen mask first. Yes. Before you help anybody else.
Absolutely.
And also, I heard a lot of like healthy boundaries, like knowing when to apply those healthy boundaries of like, you know, your self-care, your process, and getting yourself and keeping yourself in a healthy state so you can help others. Can you talk a little bit about healthy boundaries and how that looks for work, and also you're married and your personal relationship?
Absolutely. So I talk about boundaries all the time, and I'm a person who, earlier in my life, I think I struggled with boundaries because I'm a huge people pleaser, right? And so when you are a people pleaser, you do things typically to please people, not yourself. And so that means that you forego your own boundaries a lot of times just so people can be happy. And I've had to practice that now more than ever. If not, I really, really end up hurting myself. So healthy boundaries can look like time. It can look like setting a schedule for yourself. Like, what are you going to do? What are you not going to do? So one of the things I've had to do was I have a calendar. I literally have to put a sticker in the place where an hour spot is open. Otherwise, I will put somebody there to work with. I'll put a client there. So I've had to literally force myself to take a break in the day. I've literally had to force myself not to do no more than 4 clients back to back without taking a break. So I used to do 7 and just go 7 hours straight. But now it's like, that's not really effective. That's not really fair to your clients just because you're trying to cram everybody in before a certain time. You need to take a break. And so I do 4, a break, and then I do 2 more if I have to. And that works. That's effective for me. I feel energized. I feel present. So those things work. So those are healthy boundaries. I've had to say no to a lot of opportunities. So people asking me to speak, or people asking me to write articles, or kind of do things. I've had to become real selective about what I choose to say yes to. And if those things align with my values or not. That's what healthy boundaries mean for me in business. I've had to say, cut myself off at a certain time. I'm a perfectionist too, because typically people pleasers are perfectionists, right? With having a physical product, I want to get everybody their stuff like tomorrow. Like I want to be like Amazon, and I can't, right? Because I'm one person. So I've had to get comfortable with saying, we'll get it out, we'll process it in 2 to 5 days. That feels so uncomfortable for me, but that's the way that I'm riding, and that's effective. In my relationship, I've had to learn how to say no. Business cannot stay here right now. When I first got started, it was my business and that's it. My relationship came second, and that took a huge toll on my relationship. And I was like, business or nothing else, Periscope or nothing else, Instagram and Facebook or nothing else. I was like, I'm going to go live, and I'm going to go live every day. And that was just me being a people pleaser and kind of like having my all or none thinking, right? So I've had to set healthy boundaries in my marriage by saying, I'm not going to be on the phone. I'm not going to go live every day. I'm not going to pour into everybody else and neglect my relationship and myself. So I've had to do that, and that's been super effective.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that's the first thing when you are ambitious and when you are, building your business. Sometimes the relationship that take the biggest hit is the relationship with yourself and the relationship with a partner. Yeah. So thank you so much for calling that out, because I feel like so many people listening are receiving so much value already on just the things that you touched and how we can really take our mental health to the next level. So yes, now, of course, I want to talk to you about these therapy cards. So what inspired you to create these therapy cards in the first place?
Yeah, so the cards actually started out, they were supposed to be for my coaching side of the house, right? So I'm a food relationship strategist too. So the cards literally came to me in 2018 as an idea for food relationships. I was like, I'm going to do cards to help people better their relationship with food. Then I got into private practice in 2019 and saw that there was a huge lack in deficit for providers who were available to work with people. And I live in Austin, and there weren't a lot. Actually, I was the only Black psychologist here for a while. There were other mental health therapists, but I was the only Black female psychologist. And I was like, wait, what? And so I started the private practice, honestly, just because, again, I wanted travel money. I was like, I don't want to touch my full-time job money. I want my private practice money to fund my travel. Well, I got in and it quickly booked up. So I started in January of 2019. And by the summer, I had a full caseload. And I'm only part-time in private practice. So I was like, I have to find a way to provide services to people who I literally can't see in person. And I want people to feel like they're talking to Dr. Ebony, because I don't know if you know that our restrictions with licensing. You can only practice within the state that you're licensed. So people would hit me up on Instagram in California, even though I'm licensed in California, I was only taking clients in Texas. So they'd hit me up in like California or New York and say, hey, I want to work with you. And I would have to tell them no, because you're not where I'm currently licensed and practicing. And then I would have to turn them down or provide them a referral. So I said, I want people, one, to feel like they are talking to me. So we want to address the access issue, because there's a huge access issue. There's a huge barrier. Then I wanted the cost. I am a person who is electing not to take insurance. One of my things is I'm private pay, because I don't want to deal with insurance companies forcing me to diagnose people who don't have a diagnosis. And I said, I don't want to practice like that. I don't want to be forced to do this. So I also want to address the issue of money, because I know everybody can't pay what I'm asking people to pay per hour. And then stigma. So I took the card idea from the coaching side of things, and I was like, well, do the therapy cards. Why won't you just make these therapy cards? It seems like that's what's needed more than coaching cards. And that's literally how it came about. And I was like, oh, because I was going to do a workshop. And if anybody's familiar with following me, in 2020, at the beginning of the year, I was doing a virtual retreat, and I was doing a lot of in-person workshops. That is how I was going to get myself out, to spread myself out to more people. Then I was like, you could just do the therapy cards. That'll get to way more people. And it literally happened like that. And then COVID hit. And I was like, oh, Lord, now we can't do the cards. And so I was like, people are out of work. People aren't really going to want the cards. And then I got on the phone with my marketing coach, and she was like, this is perfect timing. You need to put the cards out now, because I was going to wait until the end of the year. She said, now is the time. And so that's how we came out with it. And I was like, what better timing than now? It addresses stigma, which is huge right now. We need to be talking about this more and more, especially in the Black community, and cost effective, especially since people are out of work. So I was thinking about it in reverse. I was thinking people don't have the money. She said, well, this is perfect, because this is something people would have money for, not to go in person to see people. And you get to work across. Now, it doesn't replace therapy, but you get to reach people who are not in Texas and that you otherwise would not have access to. So that's how they came about.
Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to get my therapy cards. And I feel like you're absolutely right. People need something that they can hold. People need something that's there all the time, because a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people, and they're like, I just can't find anyone. I just can't find anyone to work with, because everyone's booked up. And so congratulations on your business thriving and being a resource. And more than anything, congratulations on these cards, because I'm looking forward to get my cards and also sharing them with everyone listening. If anything we've said today resonates with you, I highly recommend Dr. Ebony, because I found her on Clubhouse, and everything you were saying was speaking to my heart, speaking to my soul. And then I went to your Instagram, and I was like, this is a soul sister. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this. Everything someone said just resonates. And I knew I had to have you on the podcast and just share you with the Get Loved Up community, because we need to hear these things. We need to erase the stigma and really see how we can grow together. So I guess that's my last question for you is, how do you think we're going to be able to get through this and come out on the other side healthier?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And thank you so much just for kind of reaching out to me and inviting me on. It was definitely, when I found out what you were doing, I was like, this is a yes. I have to say yes to this. So thank you for this platform, and thank you for the work that you're doing. The way that we come out on the other side, I think, is by, one, adjusting our expectations of what the other side looks like. If we're expecting the other side to look like what it looks like on the other side, then we're in for a huge set of disappointments. I think that we have to be willing to adjust to what's going to be our new normal. I think that we have to get used to working together. I think that we have to get back to community. So if we're going to come out on the other side, I would most definitely say it's going to be a community effort. I don't think we can do it alone. I've had to learn that myself. I think we're going to have to lean on people. I think we're going to have to learn how to trust each other again. I think it's going to be hard work, but I think it's going to be a very necessary work. But I would get back into community. I think that a large part of our lives have been spent being divisive and kind of an us versus them, that I think coming out on the other side is going to require that we see each other as people. We see each other as people who have strengths that can actually help us where we don't have those strengths. And I honestly think that that's how we're going to heal. And I'm specifically talking about Black people. I'm not talking about everybody. I'm talking about us. I think that we've lost the essence of who we are through no fault of our own solely. I think that this society and world have definitely stripped us of who we are as a communal body. We thrive in community. We heal in community. And I think we're going to have to get back to that. I think we're going to have to hold more spaces for each other as a community. Largely people of color thrive in community. There's no people of color group that you can look at and not see community. You will see community. And I think that is what we have to get back to, whether that's healing circles, whether that's networking opportunities, whether that's business building, whether that's talks like we have on Clubhouse. This is how we're going to get through, because a lot of that has been stripped from us. And I can go deep into that, but in our colonization, it's been stripped of us, and we've got to find that again. And we've got to put that back. And I always say, as a therapist, my job is not to be the therapist forever. My job is to give you what you need so you can take that back to your village and heal your village. And you take that back to your community and you heal your community. But we can't do it if we're not healed. And I can't be everywhere. So I love that the therapy cards have morphed into what they've morphed into, because everybody gets to kind of use these in their respective spaces and provide that healing and deeper understanding to people who are in their network.
I love that. I 100% agree. The solution is community.
Yeah.
We need that community. We need to communicate with each other and hold each other. And I appreciate you calling it out, because even in this time where we're asked to be separate, we still have, the podcast, we still have Zoom, we still have these ways to connect. And I completely relate to you in that I've actually reached more people now because of social media, because of more access to more people at one time. I realized that, like you, I can't necessarily do one-on-ones. Now I have to do groups and people at a time, but it's still making an impact, or we're still moving the needle forward. So thank you so much for the work you do, the work you're doing in the world. I know this is just the beginning of a long friendship, because again, I love everything you've said. I feel like everything you've uttered out of your mouth is extremely valuable to everyone listening. I hope everyone runs out and buys your therapy cards, because like I'm the first one in line. And can you just tell everyone if you have anything coming up and where they can find you?
Yeah, thank you so much. So you can find me online. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all that great stuff, as Dr. Ebony Online. And you can go to my website to find out more about me at drebony.com, and then the therapy cards at mytherapycards.com. So we actually have the adult version of the therapy cards. We also have the teen version, and we have 2 journals. So I just released the adult journal. That's actually sold out. We'll restock in February, and we have the teen journal coming available in the next few weeks. So it's a whole product line. It actually was literally just supposed to be a deck, and it's turned into a whole product line. So we have those things. And on my coaching side of things, I also have a food relationship program, as well as a program where I coach other mental health professionals into building their business. So those are all the things that I have and all the time that I have available to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. You said that's all. I'm like, that is a lot. And that is amazing. So thank you. So for putting so much out there. I mean, where people can get therapy if they need it, where people can grow their business if they need it. And also, touching on different age groups, because I do think it's different with a teen or a college student, because they're not having those milestones of like prom and graduation and college things. And so it is a whole level that has to be looked at, and that we have to come together, like you said, as community, and hold each other and heal together, and hopefully come out on the other side stronger. Because I do feel a deeper connection with my family. I've been able to reach out to more people like yourself, get to know more people because of slowing down. So I do think there's so many benefits if we're willing to unpack them and do that work of healing ourselves, that we can actually have during this time where we're kind of resting and recovering by default. But we can still use this time to get us again to the other side healthier than we are when we started.
Absolutely. And I think those deeper connections are it. And so we just have to make sure that we're diligent and intentional about building those and creating those, especially during this time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And you all, until next time, I just want to say thank you so much for being a loyal subscriber to this show. Thank you for your comments and your reviews. If you have not already, please leave a review for the Get Loved Up podcast. I appreciate all those 5-star reviews. They do help me secure amazing guests like Dr. Ebony. They're always looking at the reviews and always looking at the stats. So please make sure you leave a review if you haven't already. And if you don't have a copy of my book, Let Your Fears Make You Fierce, email me a screenshot of your review, and I will send you a free digital copy, and you would send that to Koya at koyawebb.com. And we are definitely going to be living our truth. We're grabbing us some therapy cards. We're getting loved up, and we're doing it all together. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time. Peace and love.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you for being part of the Get Loved Up community. I like to share topics and people making a positive impact in the world, and your feedback means the world to me. If you haven't already left a review, please leave a 5-star review and let me know what you want to hear more of on the show. I'm here for you, and together we're making the world a better place, one day at a time, one show at a time. Thank you for listening.